Zeitgeist 2025, is Tom Horn putting himself out there again? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to the program today. My name is Mono Gonzalez, and I am here with Dr. Thomas Horn and Josh Peck.
Hey, great to be back. Thank you.
And we have been discussing in the last program his new book, Zeitgeist 2025. And for those of you who might not have watched it, let's do a quick review on really the title, Zeitgeist 2025, where you're going, how did you put yourself out there? Share with us, which I think is kind of fun and exciting. Share with our audience the background here.
Yeah, well, I would really encourage people to go back into your archives, watch last week's program, because we gave different illustrations. You know, the title Zeitgeist is a compound German word. It simply means the spirit of the age. The word Zeit means time. The word Geist means ghost or spirit. You put them together, it's the spirit of the age. And so in epochal moments throughout history, whether it was the rise of Nazi Germany or Marxism or whatever, Tojo, Mussolini, all of it, they had a spirit of the age in which people began to buy in to their big ideas. And of course, all these guys always start out, the totalitarians, right? They always start out whetting your appetite. You're going to get everything is going to be free. Sounds very much like America today, doesn't it? You're going to get free education, free food, free everything. It's going to be, the labor unions are going to love everything that we're doing right now, right? But then later on, the devil is in the details. And also under some of those, you know, you've witnessed the largest number of people being murdered, assassinated. Well, we know that's coming again. We know that under Antichrist, there is going to be a zeitgeist. People are going to buy into it. They're going to worship him, the Bible says, as if, and then eventually he'll actually present himself as a god. So the title of the book, Zeitgeist 2025, is Tom Horn's way of saying, we are living right now through a cultural revolution in the United States that does seem to be indicative of what would need to happen in order to pave the way for the arrival of Antichrist as well as the arrival of a false apostate religion. All of those things we see being developed right now. By the way, I'll tell you, Mondo, how I got on this. And that is that I had written the book, The Messenger. The Messenger is talking about NASA's original date for the arrival of the asteroid Apophis. They gave the date, Friday the 13th of all days, right? April 2029. And now they're saying that it's only going to be a near miss. There are other scientists that are saying they're playing a trick on you, America. You better wake up, because this has a lot more likelihood of striking Earth than what they are admitting. Scientists are saying that. But it wasn't until that book came out that we made a discovery. I was actually doing a show, and Derek Gilbert was interviewing me, and he said, well, wormwood happens in the middle of that 7-year Great Tribulation period. So if we was to take NASA's date and back up 3.5 years, we might come somewhere close to approximating the start of the 7-year tribulation period. Well, that lands in October 2025. But not just that. It lands literally right in the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles, which many Bible scholars have connected with the second coming of Christ. I go into all those reasons in the book. 10 days before that, the Feast of Trumpets, which is directly connected to the rapture of the church. Paul saying, you know, we shall not all sleep, but we, at the last trump, we shall be revived and will rise up into the heavens to meet the Lord in the air. 120 days before that is the Feast of Pentecost. Pentecost has also been tied to the rapture of the church for reasons that Gary Stearman has gone into in different magazine articles, Prophecy Watcher magazine. But the number 120 is also the biblical numerology for the end of mankind. So I just got to looking at all of this, and I thought, now, is that just a coincidence? Is there anything else curious about the year 2025? And that was ultimately, you know, all these different discoveries started stacking up until finally I thought, well, I've got to write about this. I've got to talk about this. And the end result was Zeitgeist 2025. But one other quick thing, and maybe Josh can say something about this. I was visiting with Josh one day, and I said, okay, you know, one thing, coincidence. Two things, starts getting it. Three things, 5 things. I was like, how can all of this concatenation of events be pointing towards nothing? It's all just a coincidence. And then he blows my mind and he said, and did you know this, which I didn't, that the Essenes predicted 2,200 years ago that mankind would enter its final age in the year 2025. I'm like, oh, you are kidding. Okay, you must write that chapter. Of course, Dr. Ken Johnson, who you frequently have on your program, did a lot of that research too. Him and Josh have been working together. Josh's new book is coming out right now called The Lost Prophecies of, or
The Lost Prophecies
of Qumran. And then Ken Johnson's new book on the mystery of the Essenes, which examines a lot more of that information. But it's going to blow people's minds. When they see how accurate the Essenes were, predicting that a king would rise over Israel by the name of Herod, that would turn bad during the age of the arrival of the Messiah. I mean, really? Yeah. And this is in print from 200 years before Christ. Discoveries that have only recently been made, so this is why it would be brand new information, revolutionary information for a lot of people.
You know, one of the words that you hear a lot, which is appropriate, is this idea of convergence. I mean, we've had scripture, we have prophecy, I mean, it's the inspired word of God, we've had that for a long time, and yet the events that we've been watching, and the discoveries, 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and even all the further research, is bringing it all together in a very exciting time. I mean, the last couple of years just in our life is like, wow. I mean, I've been watching prophecy for 30 years, and nothing's been this intense. Give a little background, if you will, on the Essenes. People might not know exactly who they are, but the 2025 date and how that converges in on the rest of the research.
Sure, absolutely. The Essenes were a third group of Jewish people around the time of Christ. But what's amazing is they had this whole calendar system that's totally different than what we use today, but it was also prophetic. When you match up that calendar system with the Bible, it seems to match perfectly. So what's really cool about that, they saw 7,000 years as the totality of human history, from the creation of the world until the Edenic state, or the new creation. So there's supposed to be 7,000 years for sin to kind of get taken care of. And at the 7,000 year period is split up into what's called ages. Each age is 2,000 years. And so there are 3.5 ages. What's interesting are these ages seem to, in certain events, seem to be cyclical. Not as much in exact dates. It's really hard to pin down exact dates, but in events are cyclical. So, for example, in the final 50 years, the final jubilee of what's called the Age of Torah, which was the 2,000 years between the call of Abraham to roughly the destruction of the temple. It would be 75 AD. There were a couple things that happened after that, but in that time, that was the Age of Torah. That last jubilee, that last 50 years, is where you have Jesus' entire earthly ministry. That kind of thing happened in the age of creation, which was the first age. The end of that age also culminated because you had the Tower of Babel incident, and then that led to the call of Abraham. So it stands to reason, maybe, we know we have a lot of prophecy that still needs to be fulfilled. Maybe that will be fulfilled in sometime in these 50 years. What's really coincidental, right, is when Tom was telling me about the Apophis-Wormwood connection, I started looking into it myself and reading his book, and there are 3 times that asteroid is supposed to fly by Earth. Every single one is within that 50-year period. There's one in 2029, one in 2036, and one in 2068. And it's really funny, too, because you can do the math on all those dates, and it works out to some 7-year thing. So to me, it's too much of a coincidence. I think we're heading to some really interesting times.
And I would jump in on one other thing on the Essenes before if you want to move forward on some of the other stuff in the book. Not only did they predict the arrival of Herod by name, not only did they say the Messiah would arrive when he did, that he would raise the dead, which is not even doctrine taught in the Old Testament. He would die in 32 AD. They predicted that, which is when he died, they said he would be for the Gentiles, as well as for the Jews. He would begin the age of grace, which is a New Testament term. They foresaw that as coming. They said a Benjamite would explain everything to the Gentiles. His knowledge would be in the synagogue of the Gentiles, obviously talking about the Apostle Paul. They even said that at the end of time that their voices would speak up from out of the dust, which could certainly be saw as the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? That knowledge would come back to mankind again. But here's one other thing they did, and I want people to think about what Joe Biden has done in Afghanistan and the empowering of the Taliban and ISIS-K, now probably one of the most well-equipped, most powerful military forces on earth in the hand of jihadists, because we left billions,
80 billion
of dollars in advanced American military hardware behind for them to use probably against us. But guess what else the Essenes prophesied? For this period of time leading up to 2025, the rise of Islam, when Islam didn't even exist. They predicted it, that they would be instigators of the end times. And they actually name Hamas, which also did not exist. Again, naming that by name as people who are going to play a role in the end time instigation leading up to the Battle of Armageddon. So I would tell people, definitely get Josh's book, definitely read Zeitgeist 2025, because this is really cutting edge. This is not warmed over pablum. This is really kind of edgy, breaking news, if you will, having to do with end times Bible prophecy.
There's so much more background to really the Essene movement. I had to do a research paper in seminary where in Matthew 11, you know, they come to Jesus and John the Baptist is asking, are you the one that's to come? And you compare his answers, and his answers are in order, specifically out of Qumranic material.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily, there's a couple of them certainly in the Bible, but the order that he lists there exactly. And you're like, I remember, you know, going through this and going, this is incredible that these guys in their, really what we would call secular literature or non-canonical literature, they nailed it. And so there is something here that is part of the background that is awesome. It's cool, and I think God is bringing it all together. As we continue to go on for the book, one of the things that I found in there, which some people might not know, let's talk about some of the history of America in the sense that God has allowed the spirit of the age. I love that terminology because we do know, Scripture tells us, that Satan isn't just sitting around waiting for his time of worship, dragon worship. We see that in Revelation. He's not sitting around doing nothing. He's extremely active, not just with his fallen angelic cohorts, demons and all that, but he's active in his followers. We know that Ephesians 2 says the world, you know, is by nature their children of wrath, that they are under the power of the prince of the air. How has he revealed his playbook, which he's hoping will come to pass, really in the history of America? It's just awesome in here to see that. Kind of share, if you will, on that.
Yeah, I mean, there is probably more than any book I have ever written to go peek behind the veil, right, at what was going on in early American history. Most Americans, certainly most Christians, don't know that as many as 44 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. Not Freemasons like you might think of them today. These were men who were being heavily influenced by European Freemasonry. And I'll tell you why. Because in Europe at that time, there was this idea that had been put forward by Sir Francis Bacon. He wrote a book that became very popular called The New Atlantis. It was a utopian novel. But what did this book imagine? Well, his thesis, if you will, was that at one time Atlantis was real, had been written about by Plato and Critias and Timaeus, like 300 years before Christ, and that this society had prospered and done fabulous because it was an occult democracy. And meaning by that they were working in tandem with the ancient gods. And so long as they honored the ancient gods, the gods in turn worked with them to establish this great, powerful nation. Once they turned their back on the gods, they started falling into decay, and finally they're swallowed up, according to Plato, beneath the sea. Well, Bacon's book imagined the creation of a new Atlantis, thus the title of the book. We're going to build an occult democracy that works in harmony with these ancient supernatural entities. And by honoring and blessing them, they're going to turn and give us their energy, and they're going to help us. Which, by the way, is why all throughout the U.S. capital city, every time a cornerstone was laid, you see guys like George Washington, a 33rd degree Freemason with his full Masonic garb, the all-seeing eye, of Horus, Osiris, is on his chest. And they are specifically waiting until astronomical alignments with Virgo Isis, the sister wife of Osiris, which is very much incorporated on the Great Seal of the United States, until we are in conjunction with certain alignments. And many historians, including Freemason historians, 33rd degree Freemasons, have written that that was being done because we wanted to make sure that we were bringing into existence buildings and structures and streets and the layout and everything else at a time that would be pleasing to the gods of antiquity. Now, anybody who thinks that I'm making some of that stuff up can do it for themselves. For instance, in the book, they'll learn how you can go to Google and type in just the title, The Most Approved Plan. You might want to add Thomas Jefferson to that. And then only click on the article that is on official U.S. government websites, right? And you will read where in the 1700s, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, now we're designing a great seal. We've signed the Declaration of Independence. We need a capital city for this new nation. And so they advertised a designing challenge, a contest. And so any architectural firms in the United States, across Europe, France, whatever, that wanted to participate, you could, pitch your plan for how this capital city is going to be laid out. So they get all these different submissions. But if you read the article on a U.S. government website, The Most Approved Plan, it says, but at the end of the day, Thomas Jefferson rejected all of the plans. Why? It answers the question, and it literally says this, because he wanted the U.S. capital city to be designed according to the old Roman pantheon and dedicated to all pagan gods. That's what it says on the U.S. government website, dedicated to all pagan gods. Well, once you know that, then this Atlantean scheme makes sense. They wanted an occult democracy that's working with the gods. Go inside the U.S. Capitol Dome. Look up. What do you see? The 4,400 or 4,664 square foot famous painting by Italian painter Constantino Brumidi called the Apotheosis of George Washington. Apotheosis means to become a god. What god is he becoming? Again, Freemasons, Walt Whitman, they all said he's becoming Osiris, which is the Greek version of Apollo. The Egyptian version of Apollo. He's becoming the Osiris of the afterlife. But look at the heaven that he is rising up into. There's not a single Christian symbol there. Jesus isn't there. Michael the Archangel isn't there. There's no Bible sitting on the arm of the throne that, that Washington is sitting on as he's rising up into the heavens. He is literally surrounded by pagan gods and demons. But what are they doing? Like there's one of the images in that painting that shows Isis dragging the transatlantic telegraph cable. So she's playing her role. She's part of the Atlantean scheme. She's helping us with the development of our country. You look at other images and that same theme just goes on and on and on. And so look down below that painting. Well, maybe we'll get into that in a moment, or maybe even on a different program. 72 pentagrams. The U.S. Capitol Dome is literally a Antichrist version of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. If we have time, I will explain that. But anyway, what Thomas Jefferson wanted is what we built. And that's why when you visit Washington, D.C., and you walk out into the mall and you're observing the domed pregnant belly of Isis that is sitting right behind you, you look this direction, and what do you see? The largest obelisk of its kind in the world, 6.666 inches high, 6.66 inches long, each line at the perimeter of the base. It has a Bible bound inside a magic 666 square, which is used for binding, not only binding influences you don't want to affect the nation, but for calling on the second coming of Apollo. Benjamin Franklin, who we talked about last week, even made his own magic squares for invoking the second coming of these entities. Now, all of the layout of Washington, D.C. is based on the myth of Osiris, and I'll give this to you very quickly. What does that have to do with anything? Okay, the myth of Osiris, the most famous ancient Egyptian myth, was that Osiris's evil brother Set was jealous of him, and guess what he did? He conspired with 72 ruffians to murder Osiris. They chop him into 14 pieces. They throw the pieces into the Nile River. His sister wife Isis searches the banks of the Nile River. So she recovers 13 pieces. The part she can't find is his missing male organ. So she takes and puts his body back together magically. I don't know if she's stitching with thread, but she puts his corpse back together. And then she creates a magic obelisk, and she affixes it to his ithyphallic corpse in place of his male organ. And then she conducts the very first raising of Osiris ceremony. She calls forth the seed of Osiris to rise up through the magic obelisk, emit into her belly. She becomes pregnant. She gives birth to Horus, which is the son of Osiris, or the second coming of Osiris, Osiris in flesh. Now, that myth formed the most important of all cosmology all throughout ancient Egypt. And therefore, everywhere you went, if there was a temple, whether it was Amun-Ra, whatever it was, there would be the dome belly of Isis and an obelisk standing in the courtyard on the outside representing that magic. In fact, so important was this that during a festival called Opet. Now, by the way, this is really important and even timely because Egypt, the nation of Egypt, has just announced that they are going to revive the ancient festival of Opet, in which the gods are taken on barges up the Nile River to the Temple of Amun-Ra in Karnak, which represented exactly where the pharaoh would go at the inauguration of every new pharaoh. You'd put him on the barge with those gods. He's going up the barge on his way to the largest temple facility ever built. The laity are walking on both sides of the Nile River, and they're celebrating, and they're actually calling on these gods to do favors for them. They're reenacting parts of the Osiris-Isis myth. Finally, he arrives there. He disembarks. He goes inside the ever-pregnant belly of Isis, and as he's standing in there looking out at the obelisk on the outside, he is surrounded by the magicians of Egypt, and they conduct the raising of Osiris ceremony. Don't forget, the book of Exodus tells us these guys had very powerful occult power. They could mimic almost every miracle that was performed during the Exodus. So they call for the seed of Osiris, come up through the obelisk in the courtyard, emit into the belly of Isis where Pharaoh is standing, and Pharaoh is transmogrified. He goes into the temple of Isis a man, he comes out, he is the Horus, he is the Osiris, he is God in flesh. And Egypt celebrates because they have divine representation. Now, fast forward to today, I know I'm going to run out of time. At the inauguration of every American president, what is being reenacted? They are conducting, the modern Egyptian magicians are conducting the raising of Osiris ceremony while the president is reenacting everything that happened in ancient Egypt that was supposed to incarnate the god Osiris, who the Greeks would call Apollo. Now, why should Americans, and why should Christians in particular, care about that? Because the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States of America is derived from the prophecies, the mottos are derived from the prophecies of the ancient Cumae Sibyl, who was the most powerful of the Sibylline oracles for Apollo, if you will. It would predict the future, in which she foresaw that when the Novus Ordo Seclorum arrived, while his father usurps the authority of the God of the Bible up in the heavens, Jupiter, Saturn, which is on the front side of the Great Seal of the United States, while his father is doing that, on earth, Apollo is born and takes his role as the head of the new order of the ages, what we call the New World Order. Now, why should Christians care? Because two places in the New Testament the Bible identifies that Apollo is going to be the spirit that is incorporated into, incarnated into Antichrist. 2 Thessalonians 2:3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, which is the Greek word Apollo. Revelation 17:8, the beast thou sawest was and is not, shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. This is literally the raising of Osiris ceremony, and go into perdition, the Greek word again, Apollo. So why should people care? Because the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States is going to come to pass. The Bible says that it is going to come to pass, in that there is going to be a second coming of this ancient, terrible, horrific, pagan entity that is going to be incarnated within the arrival of the man of sin. So we are marching down towards the year 2025, which I do believe it's more likely than not. I'm not a date setter, but I will tell you it's more likely than not, in my opinion, that 2025 represents the start of what we dispensationalists call the Great Tribulation 7-year period.
You know, this is all excellent information, and we're going to take a little break here to show you how you can get this. As I read the book, it's incredible. You will really want to know this, so we're going to be back in a moment.
There's no doubt that you've heard things today that you will likely never hear about in church. As always, we enjoy bringing you the experts on subjects that could dramatically affect your life in the days ahead. Can there be any doubt that we're watching what the Bible calls the birth pains leading up to the rapture of the church? We are certainly living in unprecedented times, the times the prophets of the Bible predicted some 2,500 years ago. But we know that the only answer to the world's problems is Jesus, and like many of you, we are anxiously awaiting his soon return. Tom's book, Zeitgeist 2025, Countdown to the Secret Destiny of America, may be the most fascinating book I've ever read. We've only covered a small portion of its 366 pages on the program today, but you are in for a shocking expose on world events as seen through the eyes of the ancient prophets and historians who appear to have seen the disconcerting and troubling future of America years in advance. Tom's book is available for your gift of $30 or more to support the worldwide ministry of Prophecy Watchers, and it comes with a free bonus, his explosive new DVD, The Secret Destiny of America Revealed. And as always, we'll ship both the book and the DVD to you for free anywhere in the USA. We have a very special subscription offer for you. We've never done anything quite like this before. For your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you can subscribe to either the digital or print version of our magazine. And here's the best part. In addition to 12 issues of the magazine, this offer comes with a fantastic bonus: 8 DVDs from some of the leading prophecy experts in the world, including our founder, Gary Stearman. 8 DVDs plus 12 issues of the magazine represents a $225 value, all for your gift of just $50 or more to support Prophecy Watchers. This offer is available anywhere in the USA and will ship both the magazine and the DVDs to you absolutely free. Don't wait or hesitate. Call the toll-free number on the screen or visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv to take advantage of this limited time offer.
Well, I hope you take advantage of that offer because this new book, as well as the accompanying information DVD, is just absolutely incredible to show us that something's coming. We don't have to be surprised, or I think none of us would be surprised as we look around and think, how bad is it going to be in just a couple years? So anyways, so we appreciate you guys being here today. And if you are watching this again, the goal is always to remind you to put your faith and trust in Jesus. He has allowed these things to come to be, these discoveries to happen, to point us to Him. And we watch it. 2025 is coming quick. And I think all of us, even my friends and family who are not necessarily believers, they're asking, what's going on? What's going on? We're watching the events around us. So appreciate your time today. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.